When I was growing up, the beautiful Victorian mansion on Maple Street was my entire universe. I still saw my mother boasting about it to everybody who would listen, and my father received it from his parents. She would make theatrical gestures with her wine glass while saying, "Just look at these original hardwood floors," at her many patio dinner parties. You just don't find craftsmanship like this anymore. When we moved here, I was 7 years old, and I found comfort in my father's companionship, while my mother was busy showing off her treasured property to her friends. Mom never understood me the way Dad did. Like magic, he would detect when I completed one book and come out with another right away. He would grab another volume from behind his back and say, "Hannah," his eyes sparkling, "I think you're going to love this one." And I always did. Mom didn't understand. She would sigh and watch me cuddle up with my newest treasure on the window seat. "Hannah, sweetie," she would say, "don't you want to go play with the youngsters that live next door?" Sarah, who lives next door, recently acquired a new bicycle. I would respond, "I'm good here, Mom," without raising my gaze from my paper. Dad would only wink at me from behind his newspaper, but I could sense her displeasure from the other side of the room. Not all of me was antisocial. I had my shining moments in school, particularly once I began contributing to the school newspaper. Even the popular students would approach me in the corridor to inquire about the release date of my next piece, since my stories always got people talking. But my grandmother's house, with its enchanted library room that smelled of leather and old paper, was still my favorite place to escape. Grandma used to remark, "A writer needs to read," as she ran her fingertips over the covers of her favorite novels. How else will you learn to tell your own stories? She would let me stay there for hours, giving me hot chocolate and cookies, as I read anything from contemporary mysteries to classic literature. When the cops arrived at our home, I was 12 years old. I recall every aspect of the incident, including the officer's solemn demeanor, Mom's coffee cup breaking on the kitchen floor, and the words "terrible accident" reverberating through our hallway. Dad was gone in an instant. Mom wept for weeks. At night, I would hear her sobbing into her pillow. Then, however, something changed. Makeup and perfume bottles took the place of the tissues on her nightstand. She began going out in the evenings and returning home with a smile on her face and a spring in her step. "Life goes on, Hannah," she said to me while putting on lipstick in her small mirror one morning over breakfast. "We can't stay sad forever." Although I agreed, there was something strange about the way she stated it, as if she were trying to persuade herself more than I was. Unbeknownst to me at the time, that morning signaled the start of the end of my childhood. Richard and Mom met at a gathering at work. A week later, he was coming over for supper. He had moved in his belongings in 2 weeks. They got married in a modest courtroom ceremony within a month. I hardly had time to comprehend that this stranger was now residing in Dad's home, sleeping in Dad's bed, and occupying Dad's place at our dinner table, since it occurred so quickly. I noticed the worry in Grandma's eyes when she first met Richard. Their hushed chat soon escalated into high shouts as she drew Mom away into the kitchen. Grandma growled, "Linda, you hardly know this man. Think about Hannah." Mom retorted, "I am thinking about Hannah. She needs a father figure." Grandma's voice broke as she said, she had a father, and his memory deserves more respect than this. Grandma was never again permitted to enter our home after that. Mom advised her not to return until she was able to offer assistance. Richard made me feel uncomfortable in numerous ways, but he never physically assaulted me or screamed at me. He would switch on the TV at full blast as soon as he entered a room where I was reading. He would start whining about clutter if I was working on my homework at the kitchen table. Richard once collected Dad's old pictures and placed them in a box while I was gazing at them in the living room. Mom remained silent while watching everything. To make matters worse, Mother began sending me to my room every time Richard got home from work. "Honey, Richard's had a long day," she would reply. "He made some quiet time." Whatever little attention I had been receiving vanished when Mom became pregnant. Cooing over paint samples and little clothing, they transformed Dad's former office into a nursery. You would assume that my sister Emily was the first baby ever when she was born. When Mom was nursing Emily one morning, I stood in front of her. "All of my clothing no longer fit, Mom. For school, I need new ones." She looked at me like I'd asked for a private jet. "Hannah, do you have any idea how expensive babies are? We just had to buy Emily a new crib. But Mom, my jeans are all too short." "For God's sake," Richard interrupted from behind his newspaper, "the girl acts like we're made of money. When I was her age, I wore hand-me-downs." Mom sighed heavily. "We'll go to the discount store this weekend, but this is the last time, Hannah. You're getting too expensive to maintain." "Too expensive to maintain?" I repeated, my heart sinking, like I was a car with too many repair bills. I looked at Emily in her designer onesie, surrounded by new toys, and felt something inside me harden. I was trudging home from school one rainy Tuesday, lost in my thoughts, when I heard a familiar voice call my name. There, standing under a red umbrella with that mischievous smile I'd missed so much, was Grandma. "Hannah, sweetie." She pulled me into a tight hug that smelled of cinnamon. "Oh, look at you. You've grown so tall." "Grandma," I hugged her back fiercely, realizing just how much I'd missed her. "I haven't seen you in forever." Her face clouded slightly. "I know, dear. Your mother, well, she's made it clear I'm not welcome at the house anymore." Then her eyes twinkled. "But what she doesn't know won't hurt her, right? How about we get some hot chocolate and catch up?" At the small cafe around the corner, over steaming mugs and chocolate croissants, Grandma laid out her proposal. "Your mother can't stop me from seeing my granddaughter," she said firmly. "If she asks, just tell her you're out with friends. You do still have friends, don't you?" And just like that, my life split in two. At home, I was the unwanted shadow, tiptoeing around Richard's moods and Mom's indifference. But my afternoons belonged to Grandma. We'd spend hours in her library, discussing books and writing. She'd help me with my homework, then we'd cook dinner together. Mom never questioned where I was spending my time. If anything, she seemed relieved when I'd come home late. This went on for about a year, until one night at dinner, Mom and Richard dropped their bomb. "Emily needs her own room," Richard announced, cutting into a steak. "She's getting too big for the nursery." I looked up from my plate, confused. "But all the bedrooms are taken." "Unless you're turning Dad's old office," Mom interrupted. "We've decided to give her your room. You can sleep on the pull-out couch in the basement." The basement, the dark, damp space where Richard stored his tools and Mom kept old holiday decorations, where the heating barely worked in winter. "This isn't fair," I protested, looking to Mom for support. "Dad would never." "Well, your father isn't here, is he?" Mom snapped. "And quite frankly, Hannah, you should be grateful we're letting you stay here at all. Most kids your age would be happy to have any space to themselves." I sat there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, as the full impact of her words hit me. Letting me stay here? Like I was some charity case they'd taken in, not the daughter who'd lived in this house since she was 7. Not the girl whose father had lovingly painted clouds on her bedroom ceiling when she was 10 because she said she wanted to sleep under the sky. "When do you want me to move?" I asked, my voice hollow. "This weekend," Richard said. "I want to start painting on Monday. Emily wants pink walls." That night I lay in my bed for just 3 more days, and stared up at those fading clouds. I took a picture of them with my phone, knowing they'd soon be covered by whatever shade of pink Emily had chosen. Another piece of Dad erased, another part of me displaced. Living in the basement turned out to be a blessing in disguise. The isolation gave me the clarity I needed, a plan to get out. College became my lifeline, my ticket to freedom, and I threw myself into making it happen. Every afternoon at Grandma's house, I worked on my applications. My portfolio was growing, impressive editor of the school newspaper, 3 statewide creative writing competition wins, and a collection of short stories published in various youth literary magazines. My English teachers wrote glowing recommendations, especially Mrs. Peterson, who called me the most promising young writer I've encountered in 20 years of teaching high school. Graduation day arrived with June's sticky heat. I sat among my classmates in the auditorium, scanning the crowd. Grandma was there, beaming proudly. I gave her a small wave from the stage as I walked across to accept my diploma. Mom was nowhere in sight. When I finally called her later that evening to share the news, her response was flat. "Well, that's nice. I hope you're going to start paying rent when you move into your dorm." The following autumn, when I packed my things to leave, Mom made no attempt to stop me. No tearful goodbye, no promises to visit. "It's about time you grew up," she said. "Have fun at college, Hannah. Maybe one day you'll remember us." I didn't respond, just closed the door softly behind me. Grandma, on the other hand, gave me a hug so tight I thought I might never breathe again. "I'm proud of you," she whispered into my hair. "But don't forget to come back and visit. I'll always be here, no matter what happens." For the first time in years, I felt free. Free of Mom, of Richard, and the expectations that had smothered me. I was finally starting to build my own life. But as I waved goodbye to Grandma and headed down the road toward a future I had worked so hard to create, I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow I had left behind more than just a house. "I've had enough of your attitude, young lady. Your mother and I have put up with your ingratitude for years. It's time she made a choice. Either you start showing some respect, or what?" I challenged. Mom stood up slowly, her hand still resting on her pregnant belly. "Or you can leave." The words hung in the air like poison. Leave. I repeated. This is my house. Dad's house, actually. Mom's voice was ice cold. "Since your father didn't leave a will, the house legally belongs to me. You're 18 now, an adult. I'm no longer legally required to provide for you." I stared at her in disbelief. This woman, who used to pack heart-shaped sandwiches in my lunchbox, who once held me all night when I had a fever, was throwing me out of my own home. You can't be serious. Mom walked to the front door and opened it wide. The spring evening air rushed in, carrying the scent of blooming lilac, Dad's favorite. "Get out." I stood frozen for a moment, looking at this stranger in my mother's body. Then something inside me shifted, like a key turning in a lock. Without another word, I walked down to my basement room and started packing. It didn't take long. Most of my belongings were books anyway. I could hear Emily upstairs asking in her little voice what was happening. Richard's gruff response. Mom's silence. 20 minutes later, I walked out of my childhood home with 2 duffel bags and a backpack. I didn't look back. Grandma opened her door before I could even knock. One look at my face told her everything she needed to know. She pulled me into her arms, and finally I let myself cry. When I'd calmed down enough to tell her everything, her face grew stormy, but her voice remained steady. "You'll stay here, of course, and I'm paying for whatever that scholarship doesn't cover." "Grandma, no, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm telling you." She squeezed my hand. "Your father would never forgive me if I let his daughter's dreams die because of—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. this situation. 3 months later, I was moving into my dorm at Riverside State. I'd found a job at the campus cafe that worked around my class schedule. Between that, Grandma's help, and my scholarship, I could just about make it work. Mom never called, never texted, never tried to find out if I was okay. I deleted her number from my phone, but couldn't delete the ache in my chest that appeared every time I saw other students' parents visiting them on weekends. Junior year of college brought an unexpected turn in my life. While working on yet another creative writing assignment, I had an idea that wouldn't let go. It wasn't my usual style. Instead of literary fiction, I found myself writing a psychological thriller about a woman uncovering dark family secrets. Maybe I had some things to work through. You should enter it in the National Emerging Writers Competition. My favorite professor suggested after reading the first few chapters. It's different, raw, honest. I spent months perfecting the manuscript, writing between classes and cafe shifts, often staying up until dawn. When I finally submitted it under the pseudonym E.J. Blake, I didn't expect anything. The competition was notorious for attracting thousands of entries. Then came the call. "Is this Hannah Morrison?" A woman's crisp voice asked. "I'm calling from Riverside Publishing regarding your submission to the National Emerging Writers Competition." I gripped my phone tighter. "Yes, Miss Morrison, we're pleased to inform you that the Glass House has won first prize. Furthermore, we'd like to offer you a publishing contract." I sat down hard on my dorm room floor. "I'm sorry, what?" The advance they offered was more money than I'd ever seen. The contract arrived the next day by courier minus 12 pages of legal language that basically said they believed in me and wanted more books. The book hit shelves 4 months later, and the reviews started rolling in. A stunning debut. Breathtakingly honest. A new voice in contemporary fiction. By the time I graduated college, I had 2 more books out under my pseudonym, both bestsellers. My second advance bought me a beautiful apartment in the city. The third let me quit my cafe job and write full-time. Grandma kept me updated on family news, though I never asked. Emily started first grade, she mentioned during one of our weekly dinners, and the little one, Thomas, just started kindergarten. I nodded, pushing my pasta around my plate. It was strange to think I had siblings out there who didn't know I existed, but I felt good without them. Really good. Especially after I met David at a local bookstore where I was doing research for my 4th novel. He was a literature professor who had no idea his favorite new author was sitting right next to him in the classic literature section. E.J. Blake's latest book, he'd said, noticing me looking at a display of my own work. Brilliant stuff. Wish I knew who they really were. I smiled mysteriously. Maybe they just value their privacy. We married 2 years later in Grandma's backyard, surrounded by books and fairy lights. David insisted on reading a passage from the Glass House during his vows, still unaware he was quoting his own bride. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood with a library bigger than my old basement room and a garden full of lilacs. Life was good, better than good. And then one day, there was an unexpected turn. "It's time," Marcus, my publisher, announced during our quarterly meeting. "Your new book is your strongest yet, and we think revealing E.J. Blake's identity would create exactly the buzz we need for the launch." Marcus was right, of course. The reveal was orchestrated perfectly, a major literary event at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Journalists, critics, and fans packed the ballroom. I stood backstage, my heart hammering. "Ready," David whispered, straightening my blazer. No, I laughed nervously. But when has that ever stopped me? The moment I stepped onto that stage, camera flashes exploding like stars, I felt strangely calm. "Hello," I said into the microphone. I'm Hannah Morrison, but you might know me better as E.J. Blake. The room erupted. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. My face was everywhere. Magazine covers, morning shows, literary blogs. Mystery author revealed. E.J. Blake, literature's best-kept secret. The woman behind the words. Then came the message on social media. Hannah, sweetheart, I've been watching you on TV. You look so beautiful, so successful. I've missed you so much. Can we talk? I want to make things right. Love, Mom. My finger hovered over the delete button. After 14 years of silence, now she wanted to talk. I have nothing to say to you. I wrote back. Please don't contact me again. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, I was in my home office when David called up from downstairs. There's someone at the door. I knew before I reached the foyer. Mom stood on my porch, older but still recognizable. Her eyes were red and puffy. "Oh, Hannah," she cried, stepping forward with outstretched arms. I stayed behind the screen door. "What do you want?" She wiped her eyes, composing herself with surprising speed. "I've been following your success. You've done so well for yourself." "No thanks to you," I said. I know I made mistakes," she wrung her hands. "But I'm here because, well, Emily is graduating high school next month. She's so bright, Hannah. She got accepted to several colleges, but with us still in school and the economy being what it is." I let out a harsh laugh. "You're here for money." "She's your sister," Mom pressed, "and I know you're doing well now. Those books must bring in quite a bit." "My sister," I interrupted. "The same sister you gave my room to. The sister you spent my college fund on. That sister. Hannah, please, we're family." "No," my voice was steel. "We're not family. Family doesn't throw their child out on the street. Family doesn't steal their college fund. You made your choice 14 years ago, Mom. You chose Richard and your new family over me. You don't get to show up now, acting like a loving mother, just because you want my money. You ungrateful, selfish brat." Mom's voice rose to a shriek. "After everything we did for you." She was causing a scene now, her voice echoing down our quiet street. "You let your own sister suffer just to spite me." I stepped back inside. "Goodbye, Mom." The door closed with a satisfying thud, drowning out her continued screams. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, David called me into the living room. His face was grim. On a TV screen was my mother, dabbing her eyes with a tissue as she spoke to a sympathetic interviewer. "My daughter abandoned us," she sobbed. "As soon as she got famous, she forgot where she came from. Now her little sister needs help with college, and she won't even answer our calls. Money changed her. Success made her cruel." The interview was just the beginning. Soon my social media was flooded with hate messages from strangers who'd read Mom's posts about her heartless daughter who threw away her family for fame. "Karma will get you," one comment read. "What kind of person abandons their family?" said another. "Your poor mother, your poor sister." I was shell-shocked until Marcus called. "We're holding a press conference," he said firmly. "Time to tell your side." "I don't want to air my dirty laundry in public," I protested. "Hannah," he said gently, "you've built your career on telling the truth through your stories. Maybe it's time to tell your own." The next morning, I stood at the podium, cameras flashing. Grandma sat beside me, her spine straight as steel, her eyes clear and determined. "My name is Hannah Morrison," I began, my voice steady. "And this is the story my mother isn't telling you." We discussed everything for the following hour, including the day I was kicked out, the basement bedroom, the ruthless stepfather, and the stolen college cash. Grandma gave me bank statements that proved she had covered the cost of my schooling. I had school documents, old text messages, and witnesses from my adolescence. I didn't abandon my family, I said at the end. They left me behind. When my own mother kicked me out, my grandma took me in, and she was the only family I had left. I started from scratch without assistance from the lady, who is now requesting that I support the aspirations of her new family. It shattered like a tsunami. The headline said, "Author reveals years of family abuse. Mom's accusations backfire." The real-life tale of E.J. Blake. My most recent book soared to the top of all bestseller lists. My lawyer swiftly put an end to Mom's latest tirade on social media with a cease and desist letter. "One more false statement, and I'll see you in court," I told her. At last, she stopped talking. 5 years have passed since then. Since then, life has found a calm routine. David and I have our garden, our library, and our peaceful house. Every week, Grandma joins us for Sunday supper, during which we converse, laugh, and tell sincere tales. The siblings I'll never meet, Emily and Thomas, are on my mind occasionally. I hope they are content. I wish them love. In contrast to how she was for me, I hope their mother learns to be better for them. But for the most part, I never give that aspect of my history any thought. Family isn't always about blood, I've discovered. At times, it concerns those who decide to remain when others leave. There are moments when creating something new from the ashes of what was lost is the goal.